talk about the beautiful business of milk today, yeah. I got milk. Let's talk about milk. Oh yeah, baby, let's talk about the beautiful business of milk today.
This episode of Got Milk is sponsored by Shunya Agritech, the folks revolutionizing cattle nutrition with hydroponic green fodder. Visit their website at shunya.live for more details or download the Shunya app from Play Store or App Store.
Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. So today we're diving into this whole A1 versus A2 milk thing. I mean, it's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Like, you see the headlines, you see it in the stores. People are talking about it.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of strong opinions out there.
Yeah, for sure.
So we're going to try to break it down today, and we're going to be using a scientific review article from the Indian Journal of Hill Farming. It's called A1 and A2 Milk, Myth versus Reality, a mini review.
Okay.
And hopefully we can help clear up some of the confusion, because I think even for people who follow this stuff, there's a lot of back and forth.
Right.
So where should we even begin with this? What is the fundamental difference between A1 and A2 milk?
Okay, well, so it all boils down to one tiny difference. We're talking about like a single amino acid in one of the main proteins found in milk.
Okay.
Beta-casein.
So beta-casein is the protein.
Yeah, it's one of the main proteins in milk.
Got it.
And A1 and A2 milk just have like a little swap. Think of it like, like a chain of building blocks, and one of the blocks is just slightly different.
Okay. I'm starting to get the picture here.
Okay, so in A1 milk, there's an amino acid called histidine at position 67.
Okay.
But in A2 milk, there's proline at that same spot.
Okay, so it's really just this one tiny little difference.
It seems like such a small thing, but it actually has some pretty significant consequences.
Okay, so help me understand this. So A2 is like the original, like that's what our ancestors would have been drinking, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, thousands of years ago, there was this mutation in European cattle breeds, and that's where A1 milk came from.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, but why does any of this matter? Like, why should we even care about this ancient history of milk?
Well, because that little tiny mutation, it impacts how our bodies digest the milk.
Okay.
So when you digest A1 milk, it releases a peptide called beta-casein 7, or BCM7 for short.
BCM7.
And A2 milk doesn't do that. Because of that proline, it doesn't release that peptide.
Okay, so that's a pretty big difference.
It is.
And BCM7, this is where things start to get kind of interesting, right? Because it acts like an opioid.
You got it.
Like, it's in the same family as morphine, and it interacts with our guts and even our brain stems.
Yeah, that's what makes it so interesting, but also potentially concerning.
Okay, so when I see those headlines linking A1 milk to all these different health problems like heart disease, diabetes, even autism and SIDs, that's what they're talking about. This BCM7 potentially messing things up in our bodies.
Exactly. That's the theory, but there's a lot of debate about it.
Okay.
You know, some studies show a connection, but others haven't found a direct link.
Okay, so where do things stand right now? Like, is A1 milk officially bad for us?
Well, no, not officially. I mean, major authorities like the European Food Safety Authority, they looked at all the research.
Okay.
And they said there's no direct link between A1 milk and those conditions you mentioned.
Okay.
And Australia and New Zealand, they came to similar conclusions.
Okay, so now I'm really confused.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's evidence on both sides.
There is. It's definitely a mixed bag of findings.
Yeah, what's a milk drinker supposed to make of all this?
Well, I think it's important to remember that a lot of these studies are what we call observational studies.
Okay.
Which means they look at patterns in large groups of people.
Okay.
But they don't actually involve controlled experiments.
I see. So it makes it hard to pinpoint exactly what's causing what?
Exactly.
Okay. So it's not that A1 milk is definitely bad.
Right.
But there's enough there to make us want to look into it more.
Yeah, there's enough smoke to warrant further investigation.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
And this is where the story gets really interesting.
Okay.
Because did you know that Indian native cow breeds, like the Gur and Sahiwal cows and buffalo milk, they're almost entirely A2.
Wow, so India is like an A2 stronghold.
Pretty much, yeah.
So does that mean their milk is like inherently safer if these A1 concerns turn out to be valid?
That's a good question. It's certainly something to consider.
Yeah, that adds a whole other layer to this whole thing.
It does. It really does.
It's like a global milk mystery.
Yeah, exactly.
And while scientists are trying to solve this mystery, the milk industry is not just sitting around waiting.
Oh, no, definitely not.
You mentioned earlier that companies, especially in New Zealand and Australia, they're jumping on this A2 bandwagon.
Yeah, they're capitalizing on it for sure.
So is this just clever marketing, or are they genuinely trying to offer a healthier choice?
Well, we'll get into that next time.
Okay, cliffhanger. Stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back after the break.
You know what's really interesting to me is how much of this comes down to how our bodies actually process these different types of milk.
Right.
You said that A2 milk doesn't release that BCM7 peptide when it's digested.
Right, and that's because of that one amino acid difference we talked about, that proline in the A2 beta-casein. It basically blocks an enzyme from cutting the protein in a way that would create BCM7. It's like A2 milk has a built-in protection mechanism. Okay, that's a good way to think about it. So the whole A1A2 debate really hinges on what happens to that beta-casein protein as it goes through our digestive system.
Exactly.
And that's why so much of the research is focused on what happens after we drink the milk, right? Like how our bodies actually react to those different peptides.
That's right.
And that brings us back to those health claims. Some studies say A1 milk could be linked to certain conditions, but then you have others, like that big review by the European Food Safety Authority, saying there's no connection. It's enough to make your head spin.
It is a complex area, and I think that's why it's so important to really think critically about the research.
Yeah.
We can't just look at one study in isolation.
Right.
We have to consider all the evidence, the different study designs, and remember that science is an ongoing process.
Okay, so that's a good point. You know what I find really fascinating about all of this is how it ties into the whole gut microbiome thing. That seems to be the hottest topic in health these days.
It is, yeah.
What role does the gut microbiome play in this whole A1, A2 story?
That's a great question. So for anyone who's not familiar with the gut microbiome, think of your gut like a bustling city, teeming with trillions of bacteria, fungi, and all sorts of other microorganisms.
Trillions.
Trillions, yeah. And that's your gut microbiome, this complex ecosystem that has a huge impact on your overall health.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it, all those tiny little residents in there. So how does milk, whether it's A1 or A2, how does that factor into this microscopic city?
Well, emerging research suggests that what we eat can influence the balance of our gut microbiome.
Okay.
And some studies suggest that BCM7, that peptide from A1 milk, might actually disrupt that delicate balance.
So the idea is that drinking A1 milk could lead to changes in the gut microbiome.
Potentially, yeah.
And then those changes could have a ripple effect on our health.
Exactly. Some researchers think that BCM7 might contribute to inflammation in the gut, or even change the types of bacteria that thrive there.
But we need more research to really understand all of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now we're adding even more layers of complexity here. It's not just about the direct effects of A1 milk itself, but also about how it might indirectly affect us through the gut microbiome. Right. It really highlights how interconnected everything is in our bodies, how something as small as a single amino acid in a milk protein could have these cascading effects.
Exactly.
It all comes back to the need for more research. Yeah. I know we keep saying that, but it's so important. A study that could really isolate the effects of A1 and A2 milk, taking into account all of these different factors. That would be huge.
It would be. But it would also be a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
You'd have to consider people's genetics, their existing gut microbiome, their overall diet. There are just so many variables.
It sounds like a scientific moonshot.
Kind of, yeah.
But I have a feeling that as we learn more about the gut microbiome, we'll get closer to being able to design that kind of study.
I agree. The field of microbiome research is exploding right now. We're learning new things all the time.
It's like we're putting together this giant, complex puzzle, and each new study gives us another piece.
Right.
But we're still working towards that aha moment when we see the whole picture.
A great analogy.
And while we wait for that full picture to emerge, I think the key is to stay curious, keep learning, and try to make informed choices based on the best evidence we have.
I think that's the best we can do.
Okay, so I think we've covered the science pretty well, but now I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about another aspect of this whole A1, A2 debate, the commercialization of A2 milk.
Ah, yes, the marketing side of things.
Exactly. We've talked about the science, but now let's dive into the marketplace and see how companies are capitalizing on this trend.
Sounds good.
So we're back, and we've been talking all about the science behind A1 and A2 milk. We've even touched on how it could all be connected to the gut microbiome. But now let's bring it back down to earth a little bit. Let's talk about what's happening in the real world, like at the grocery store, in our wallets, in the minds of consumers. You mentioned before the break that companies are really jumping on this A2 trend.
They are.
What's going on there?
What's interesting, A2 milk used to be kind of a niche product.
Yeah.
But now it's becoming mainstream. You
Mhm.
see it everywhere, especially in places like New Zealand and Australia. And it's starting to gain traction here in the U.S. too.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. And it's not cheap either. A2 milk is usually right next to the regular milk on the shelf, but it's got a much higher price tag. It feels like it's being marketed as this premium, healthier option. But with all the science still being debated, is this just savvy marketing, or is there a real effort to offer a different choice for consumers?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, companies are smart. They know what people are looking for.
Right.
And people are more and more interested in foods they think are healthier, even if the science isn't totally settled yet.
Right.
The A2 story fits right into that trend.
Yeah, it's like A2 milk is riding that same wave of health consciousness that's made organic foods and non-GMO products and even plant-based alternatives so popular.
Exactly. It's all part of the same movement.
It's a big business.
It is.
But it also makes you wonder, if A2 milk is being positioned as this premium product, is it becoming kind of a luxury? Something that only certain people can afford?
That's a really important point, and it's something we should think about.
Yeah.
If the benefits of A2 milk aren't proven yet, but it still costs more, it could end up creating a divide.
Right.
Where only people with more money have access to what's perceived as the healthier option.
That's a really good point. It really underscores the need for more research, not just to settle the scientific debate, but to make sure that if there are benefits to A2 milk, that everyone can benefit from them.
Exactly. Science should be for everyone.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of A1 and A2 milk, I think it's clear that there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. There's the science, the marketing, even ethical considerations about access and affordability.
It's a really interesting case study, I think,
It is.
in how something as simple as a glass of milk can spark such complex conversation.
It really can. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the tiniest amino acids to the supermarket shelves.
Yeah, we have.
And we've just scratched the surface. So to everyone listening, this is just the beginning of your exploration. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and most importantly, stay curious.
Absolutely.
We've got links to all the research we talked about in the show notes, so you can dig in even deeper and form your own conclusions.
Yeah, check those out.
And if you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear from you on social media. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
I got milk.